Before I tell you the story, I want you to take a minute and ask you to imagine, while I'm speaking about our loss, to think of someone you love. On March 29th, 2011, our daughter, Deanna Marie Tucker, was killed by a drunk driver. His alcohol level was 0.14, and he had no insurance, vehicle insurance. Deanna was to be married on April 23rd, 2011. She was parked at the bridal shop on Pass Road in Gulfport. She was there to discuss one of the bridesmaids' dresses. She and her 5-year-old son, Landon, walked out of the bridal shop at approximately 5 p.m. Deanna and Landon walked to the driver's rear door of her vehicle. She opened the door and let Landon in. When a witness bystander hollered for her to watch out as she was shutting the door. A speeding Mustang left the roadway and struck the passenger side of her vehicle, causing her vehicle to strike a truck that was parked next to her, crushing her between the two vehicles. As Deanna was lying on the ground between the two vehicles, a young couple removed Landon from his mama's vehicle. I arrived on the scene just in time to ride an ambulance with Deanna to the hospital. She was hollering that she couldn't breathe and wanted to sit up. Once we get to the hospital in the trauma room, I held Deanna's hand to attempt to get her to settle down. She continued to tell me that she couldn't breathe and that she just wanted to sit up. I felt helpless. After all the years in law enforcement, what had I done to deserve this? I was thinking. I stayed in there and held her hand, and she asked for her mother twice while her mother was waiting in the waiting room. She continued to tell me she couldn't breathe. I stayed in the room until they were going to put a tube in her. We waited for several hours in the waiting room to getting updates on her condition. Once she was stabilized, they allowed us to go back and see her before she was transferred to Alabama. They allowed me, her mother, and her fiance to go back. As we entered the trauma room, she was unresponsive and had tubes helping her breathe. I remember telling her that we loved her as my wife and fiance, her fiance, stood there in shock. I told them to be quick, let's get her out and get her moved. I asked the doctor when I walked out what was her prognosis. He told me he expected a full recovery and she would have to go to rehab for about 3 months. That really was an unfair question that I'd asked that doctor. As we gathered in the hallway waiting on word for them to move her, her fiance come out and stated that something had went wrong. We later learned she went into cardiac arrest. We waited in the surgery waiting room for several hours, and at about 11 p.m. we heard the news no parent wants to hear. We tried everything, but she didn't make it. We went home that night in shock, and I thought, how could a drunk driver destroy our family? How do we tell a 5-year-old his mother had died? What is he going to think? He had asked me earlier that evening about his mama, and I told him his mama had a broken leg and a broken arm, and that she would have to stay overnight. The following day, Landon was told that his mother had passed away. That night, he began to cry for his mother. My wife held him and talked to him. He turned to me as I was about to get into bed and said, "Papa, you can fix everything." I wanted to scream. I wanted to get on the floor and just cry. There was no fixing that. I think about those comments and others he have told me every day. A week after the crash, he asked Papa, why didn't the police stop that speeding car that hit my mama? Why do people hurt people? I heard my mama scream when that car hit us. Landon's comments have energized me to really figure out what can I do to help fix problems. Landon is asking all of us in this room and across this state to help keep everyone safe from this terrible violent crime. We must do our part to keep our families safe. The Annis killer pled guilty in March to DUI causing death. In April, I went to the county jail and met with him for several hours. And I'll get to the point that I think is important today. He said, after watching all these DUI commercials, I did not think they applied to me. I didn't think I was drunk. I admit I was wrong, and I accept full responsibility for what I did. But he says, how many other people think like me? On behalf of Landon, my family, and all the victims of impaired driving, we ask you to help prevent another person from being hurt or killed. Landon has asked all of us to fix it. I'm asking you to help fix it. Tell all your friends and family to designate a driver or call a cab. That's what's going to make a difference in Mississippi. And before I close today, to my law enforcement family, don't stop what you're doing. Because it doesn't matter who you are. It could be your family. Keep it up, and thank y'all for what y'all do every day. And the governor, thank you for being here today. That means a lot to me, to my family, and to every other person out here who's lost a family member. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Does anybody have any questions they want to present? Any questions?
What's the criteria for pulling someone over for DUI?
As far as probable cause, or well, you know, I think it's in the law enforcement officer's position. We look for any type of erratic driving. You know, we have a number of things in place. We have our checkpoints. This is a really big tool that we use, you know, as far as intoxicated driving. We deal with that question all the time. But here's the thing. any type of driving that would make that law enforcement officer believe that that driver is impaired, it's our job to pull them over. And that's what we do. Anyone else?